Now, so in the last session, we have discussed about the object-oriented programming. What exactly the object-oriented programming? What are the various fundamental features and the functionalities given by the object-oriented programming? Why we have to go for this object-oriented programming? What are the drawbacks in the structured-oriented programming or the procedural-oriented programming we have discussed? And along with that, we have discussed about the various fundamental pillars of the object oriented programming. Now, so now today we'll see how to implement this object oriented programming here. How to use these pillars of the object oriented programming. How to construct that applications by using these principles we'll see. Now, so as we have discussed, when coming to the object oriented programming, each and every functionality has to be get implemented in terms of the classes as well as objects. Every feature, whatever the business logic that we are going to implement inside your application, every business logic has to be get implemented with the help of this object oriented programming, as Apex is purely an object oriented programming to you. Now in this object oriented programming, whatever the business logic that we are going to write, that whole business logic we are going to be dividing into the various smaller independent or the individual units are called as classes. So now what exactly the class? A class is nothing but a physical entity, or a class is a blueprint where it contains a collection of members inside it. It contains a collection of members inside it. So what are those members? Those members may be variables. Those members may be functions or procedures or properties or constructors. All these things collectively together is called as a class. Now, once the class has been getting defined, for every class member, we can able to define the level of access. Now, by using that level of access, we can able to describe or we can able to instruct up to what level these class and the class members can be accessible by the users inside our organization. And once the class has been getting defined with a set of members, then in order to access those class members, we should have a key or we should have an instance that is called as an object. Object oriented programming is purely built upon the classes and the objects only here. Everything should be in the terms of classes and objects. Now, when coming to the object, object is nothing but an instance or a key by which we can able to access the class members. It may be used to read the value. It may be used to write the value also inside that variable. Now, let's see how can we create this class and how can we define the class. What are the various things are available upon defining the class? We'll see practically here. The first one, class. When coming to a class, what exactly class? It is a blueprint or it is a physical entity which holds or which contains a collection of variables and functions inside it. Now, the classes are used to achieve the encapsulation feature of Salesforce. As part of this encapsulation, we are going to be grouping some collection of functions together. Because for what? Because of for our understanding. Because of our understanding over here. Now, so now when coming to the class here, a class contains what? A class can have one or more variables, properties, functions, procedures, and constructors inside it. Depends upon your requirement, we can able to define a collection of variables, collection of properties, collection of functions, and procedures inside it here. Now, in this kind of scenario, how can we define this class? What is the syntax of defining this class here? Upon defining this class, we have to use this specific syntax here. We have to specify access specifier and the keyword class and specify the class name. Inside this class, you can define the variables here. Define the class members. You can define that class members here. So this is the syntax that we have to use in order to define this class. So we have to specify the access specifier and the class, then remember the word class, and then you can specify the name of the class. Now this is the syntax we have to follow in order to define a class. Now, in this kind of scenario, the word class name should be always starts with a character. It should be always starts with a character. When coming to the class name, whenever you are giving the class name, please follow some proper naming conventions. Based on those naming conventions only, please give a proper name. Don't define the class with the name some ABC, XYZ, 1, 2, 3 like that. Please give a proper meaningful name. By observing the name itself, you can understand what exactly the functionality of the class. So that even though it may be taking some more number of characters, don't worry about that. Please give a proper meaningful name for the class. So now for that here, whenever you are giving the class name should be always a single word. We cannot give the two words for the class name. So now the class name should be always a single word. And as a best practice, define the class with the first character as with uppercase. Define the class with the first character with the uppercase here. And next one, third one, we can't define two classes with the same name inside the organization. Whenever we are going to be defining the classes, we cannot define two classes with the same name. Always the class name should be unique. Because if I'm giving the two classes with the same name, then at the time of reference, whenever you are calling that class by using that name, it won't understand to which class it has to be get referred. There will be an ambiguity will get arise. So for that here, always we have to give a unique name for each and every class. We cannot define the two classes with the same name. Now, what are the Apex classes that you are going to create? All the Apex classes will be getting stored inside an object called as Apex class object. Apex classes will get stored inside an object called as Apex class object. If you want to query the data from the Apex class object, then you can query. We can query the data from Apex class object as below. You can query that. Select ID comma name body from Apex class. Already we have discussed about that. Previously we have discussed about this functionality itself here. Now, so now whenever you are defining this particular Apex class, I have specified the word class and I can specify the word class name as well. Now what exactly this access specifier over here? What is the use of this access specifier? And what the access specifier will do? And what are the various access specifiers are available inside our application? Now let's see here. Access specifier. Whenever you are going to be defining a class, we have to specify the access specifier. Now, when coming to the access specifier, I have specified inside that square braces, which means it is not a mandatory, it's an optional. You may specify, you may not specify. Now, what is the significance of this access specifier? Access specifier is going to be defining what is the level of access of this class inside an organization. Inside an organization, what is the level of access here? This class can be accessible, or these members can be accessible within the class. These members will be accessible outside the class. These members will be accessible within the organization or outside the organization here. In order to specify the level of access of each and every member inside that class, we can able to use this access specifier. Basically, access specifier is going to be defining what is the level of access of the class as well as the class members inside it. For that, we are using this access specifier. Like for example, assume that as part of our security concepts, we have discussed that. If it is an object, in that object, we are going to be creating so many records inside it. Then what is the default level of access on this records inside the object we are defining with the help of OWD? If I'm specifying the OWD as private, then the record will be getting visible to only the owner of the record as well as his manager also. The other members inside the organization will not be able to access the record. And sometimes if you want to make your record to be get visible to the other people also by default, then you can make it as public read only. When you make that public read only for that object level OWD, at that time, whenever you are going to be creating a record inside that object, then that record will be visible to you as a owner. You will be having the full control. Your manager is also having the full control who is available on the top level hierarchy. And then the other members inside the organization also, nothing but they may be your colleagues, nothing but they may be your siblings, they may be your subordinates also in the hierarchy. Those members are also able to access your record, but those people will be getting only read-only access. Like that, when coming to the object level, we are specifying those access we are specifying that level of access of the records inside that. Like the same way, whenever you are going to be creating a class, what will be the level of access for this class here? Now, this access specifier will be applicable to where only the class level or for only the members. When coming to the access specifier can be applicable for the class level as well as the members also inside that. For every member, we can able to define a separate access specifier. For each and every class member, it may be variable, it may be property, it may be constructor, it may be function, everything. For everything, we can define a different level of access. It doesn't mean if I'm providing some access level at the class level for the class, the same will be getting applicable to all the class members, not like that. For each and every class member, we can able to define a different access level. It depends upon your need. So now for that here we are using this access specifier. Now access specifier defines the level of access and the class and its members to the users inside the organization. To the users inside the organization. Access specifier can be applicable, can be applied for both class and its members. Each class member can have a different access specifier. For each class member, we can have a different access specifier. Now, at that time, what are the various access specifiers available in Apex programming here? Apex provides the below access specifiers. The first one is the private. Second one is public. Third one is protected. And the fourth one is global. So these are the 4 access specifiers are available here. So what do you mean by private? What do you mean by public? What do you mean by protected? What do you mean by global? Now, when coming to the private, whenever you are defining any class member as private, then that class member can be accessible within the class only, not from the outside of the class. As already we have discussed that, okay, when coming to the business logic, the whole business logic we are going to be implementing in terms of the various different classes. You're defining various different classes. An application may be having a number of classes. There is no restriction. Depends upon your need, depends upon the complexity of the application, depends upon the number of modules that we have. We can define the number of classes inside an application. All the classes will be combined together called as an application inside that. So now inside a class, we can define some set of members inside that. It may be variable, it may be function, property, everything. Whatever the variable that you have defined, if you want to make that variable can be accessible within the class only, not from the outside of the class, at that time we have to define this access specifier as private. Now, private members can be accessible from within the class only. We can't access the class members. We can't access the private members of the class from the outside. Whatever the private members are available inside that class, those members cannot be accessible from the outside of the class here. So now, then where we can able to apply this private here? Private access specifier can be applied for both class and the class members. Private access specifiers can be applicable for both a class and the class members also. And along with that, one more most important point here. Now, upon defining the class, I have specified the access specifier keyword. Now, this access specifier I have made it as optional. Nothing but you may provide the access specifier, you may not provide this access specifier. Now what will happen in this case if I'm not providing any access specifier over here? What will be the default access specifier will be considered by the Apex programming. Whenever you are defining a class, at that time, if you did not specify any access specifier, then the default access specifier is private. Okay, then the default access specifier is private here. Now, so nothing but this will be completely restricting to you over here by default. Now let's make a note here. If the user did not specify any access specifier, then Apex will assign or Apex will consider the member as private by default. The default access specifier inside the Apex programming is private. Simple concept. Now, so now the private members can be accessible within the class only. From the outside of the class, we cannot able to access those members over here. Now, the second one, public. Okay, the meaning of the description of the functionality is available inside the name itself, public. Public means what? When coming to the class, or these class members can be accessible. The class members can be accessible within the class as well as from the outside of the class also we can able to access that. What are the class members that you have defined? For those class members, if you want to assign some value, if you want to retrieve some value of the class members, then we can able to access within the class itself, or else we can able to assign the value from the outside of the class also. Then up to what level we can access? Within the entire Salesforce organization. Within the entire Salesforce organization. Now, what are the members that you have defined as the public? At that time, the public members can be accessible within the class as well as outside of the class also, within the entire Salesforce organization. Within the entire Salesforce application, we can able to access that here. So now what are the members that you have defined? What are the members that you have defined with the public access specifier? These members cannot be accessible outside of your Salesforce organization. Okay, outside of your Salesforce organization, we cannot able to access that members over here. Now, public members of the class can be accessible within the class as well as outside of the class also. And we can access these members within the entire Salesforce organizations. Within the entire Salesforce organization. Now, within the entire Salesforce organization, we can able to access these public members over here. And the protected. So what exactly the protected members over here? For example, there might be some situations here. Like, already we have discussed some inheritance concept over there. Assume that we are having some set of classes are there. This is one class. This is another class. And this is another class. Let's assume that these are the three classes that I have right now. Now this is some class A. And inside the class A, I have defined a variable here. Integer, some customer ID variable is available. And I'm having the class B. And then I'm having one more class, class C. Three classes are available here. Now, whenever I'm having these classes, now the class A and the class B, these two are associated. Generally, in order to make that objects to be get associated, we are going to be using the relationships concept feature. By using that relationships feature, we can able to map the association among the various objects in Salesforce. It may be between the standard, it may be between the custom also here. Now, like the same way, we can able to map the association between the classes available inside your Salesforce application also. Then how can we make it associated with the help of inheritance feature? Nothing but we are going to be mapping the association among the various classes by using inheritance, where we are going to be accessing one class features into some other classes also here based on the need in order to make it as a usability. So now when coming to the class A, I have inherited this class A into the class B. Nothing but this class A has been inherited into class B over here. The class A has been inherited into class B. So now I am inheriting this class A into the class B here. So at that time, the class A is a parent and the class B is a child. Now at that time, what are the members that are defined inside the class A? These class A member, nothing but this customer ID can be accessible within the class A as well as from the class B also. Then how can we accessible? For that, we have to make this member as protected. Customer ID member has to be defined as protected. Whenever you are defining this particular class members as protected, at that time, these protected members can be accessible within the class as well as from the outside of the class also. Outside of the class means what? In class B and class C both? No, only in the classes which are having the association with it, which are having association with the class A. Now the class B is associated with class A. So at that time, this customer ID member, which you have defined like as the protected, these members can be accessible within the class A as well as within the class B as well. But from the class C, we cannot able to access because class C is an independent class which is not having any association with the class A. So for that here, whenever if you are having some inheritance feature, at that time, if you want to make these class members can be accessible within the class as well as from the outside of the classes, within the derived classes, nothing but the child classes, we have to make it as protected. Suppose, for example, assume that I'm having my bike. Okay, I'm having my bike. Now, inside my family, I'm having so many family members. Along with that, we are having our relatives also available nearby my place. So at that time, my bike can be utilized by all my family members, or my bike can be utilized by my relatives also here. The other people, nothing but my neighbors people, those people cannot able to access they cannot able to utilize my bike. So now like the same way here also we can define that. Whenever you are defining a protected member of the class can be accessible within the class as well as from all the child classes also, not from the other classes which are available inside your organization. So at that time, we have to make it as protected. Now, protected access specifier has been defined for inheritance feature. This has been defined for inheritance feature. Now, protected members of the class can be accessible within the class as well as from all the derived classes. From all the derived classes. Child classes which are associated. But we can't access the protected members from the other independent classes. Inside the organization. Now, whenever you are using this inheritance feature, we are going for the protected access specifier. And the fourth one is global. So what exactly the global here? So now when coming to the entry point of view, definitely will be having the question, what is the difference between public and global? Public and global. Now, for example here, assume that assume that I'm having my organization. This is my entire Salesforce instance. This is my entire Salesforce instance. Inside my Salesforce instance, for each and every customer, Salesforce is allocating some amount of space. This is called as our Salesforce.com organization. Now, this is one organization here. Like already we have discussed about that. Now, let's see. So now let's assume that I have created a Salesforce account. Whenever I'm creating a Salesforce account, it may be free account, it may be the licensed account, it may be contacting by Salesforce people as well by paying some rental amount to the Salesforce. So at that time, Salesforce people are going to be allocating some amount of memory inside their server. Salesforce people are going to be allocating some amount of memory inside that Salesforce associated regions available server for me. Now, whenever Salesforce is going to be allocating some amount of space, that is called as a Salesforce.com organization. Assume that this is my Salesforce.com organization. Then whatever the Salesforce.com organization has been getting assigned, for every Salesforce.com organization, Salesforce is going to be allocating a unique identification number that is called as Salesforce.com organization ID. Okay, Salesforce.com organization ID here. Now, so this is the Salesforce.com organization ID that we have right now here. This is the Salesforce.com organization ID that we have, which is starting from 00D. If you want to fetch this Salesforce.com organization ID, then we can able to get it through the query also here. Select ID, comma name from organization. Organization object is a standard object utilizing by the Salesforce by default internally. And then by using this organization object, we can able to query that. What is the organization name that you have entered or given for your Salesforce.com organization upon creating a Salesforce account? And what is the ID has been allocated by the Salesforce for this organization, we can able to fetch over here. Now observe this one. Inside this organization, we can able to define whatever the objects, what are the users, what are the business logic that you want depends upon your requirement here. Now, when coming to the organization, not only one organization, like that some more organizations are also available inside my Salesforce server. Each and every customer who has created their Salesforce account, then for those customers also Salesforce is allocating the memory inside that same server itself. Why? Because is Salesforce is not providing a dedicated server for every customer. Salesforce is providing a shared infrastructure with the help of the multi-tenant architecture. Because of that multi-tenancy, Salesforce is going to be allocating some separate amount of space for each and every customer inside the same server. Now all the customers are going to be utilizing the shared resources of Salesforce. So that here, when coming to the organization, we assume that this is my organization. What are the classes that I have prepared? What are the objects that you have created? What are the records that you have stored? Everything will be storing inside this organization itself here. So at that time, one organization data cannot be accessible by the other organization. Nothing but Salesforce has given that much of restrictions also. They have given that much of security features also over to you. So for that here, one organization's data cannot be accessible from another organization over here. That much of restrictions are available. But now there is some cases are available here. Assume that I am a person. I am having two businesses are available. I am into the banking, I am into the finance also. I have two organizations which are by my own. One is a banking, second one is a finance here. Now in this kind of scenario, in this banking organization, I'm having, for the banking, we are having a separate organization. For the finance, I'm having a separate organization. Inside this banking organization, I have developed one banking application. Inside the finance organization, I have developed a finance application here. Now I want to make these two applications can be communicate with each other here. Then how can we access one organization's members from the another organization? So where we can go in this kind of scenarios? What kind of implementations we can do? Generally, anyone? If one organization member wants to access the data from another organization, then at that time, both the applications should be get integrated with each other. Both the application can communicate with each other here. So nothing but what happened whenever you are going to be implementing the integrations at that time, one organization's members can be exposing to the outside the world. Nothing but outside of this organization also I can able to access those members here. So at that time, we have to go for that integration. Then how can we implement that integration? Integration can be accessible by implementing some web services. Now, whenever you are going to be implementing some web services, whenever you are implementing some APIs, nothing but the application programming interfaces, which will be consumed by the different third-party applications from the different organizations. So at that time, we are going to be using the global access specifier. When coming to the global access specifier will be allows us to access that class members to be accessible within the class as well as from the outside of the organization also. But the public members can be accessible within the organization only here, not from the outside of the organization, but the global members who can able to access from the outside of the organization also over here. Now, global members can be accessible from within the organization as well as from the outside of the organization. So at that time, then how can we access these members here? What kind of members you are going to be defining with the global access specifier? Now, we have to define the batch Apex classes, schedule Apex classes, web services, APIs to be defined with global access specifier. So because sometimes in the entry point of view, they will raise a question, what kind of members we can define with global here? Now this is a situation where we are implementing some integration features, or we are doing some bulk processing. For that we have implemented some batch jobs we have implemented. That batch job may be running by ourselves manually, or that batch job may be running automatically based on that periodical time which we have scheduled inside our Salesforce.com organization. So at that time, these batch jobs are going to be running outside the organization, not within that organization. Outside the organization by using the different resources of Salesforce. So at that time, these batch programming classes, these schedule programming classes, these web services, and the APIs, everything we can able to expose to the outside the world. For that here, when coming to the banking people are going to be preparing some web services. These web services are going to be consuming by the different people. Because of that only, we are going to be making everything like us through online transactions only here. Now I'm reserving the ticket. It may be bus ticket or train ticket or flight ticket or movie ticket or whatever, and we are paying that amount through online itself. How when coming to that application, reservation system application is interacting with that banking application by using a payment gateway. That payment gateway is nothing but a web service which has been developed by the banking people, which has been exposed to the outside the world. So if any of the member wants to access that, there will be giving that permission to them here. So now for that here, when coming to the global access specifier, global access specifiers can be accessible within the organization and as well as from the outside of the organization also here.
Feroz, one question.
Yeah.
So when we make it as global, if we want to export data to other applications, then we should make it as global, right?
Yes, yes.
Not for importing data.
See,
I
it may
mean,
be any operation.
APIs will consume the data. For that, we have to specify this as global.
See, when coming to the APIs here, two scenarios will be there. One is the API may be providing by the third-party system which you are consuming within your Salesforce organization. That is one thing. Nothing but I'm calling that API is given by the third-party system. And the second one, we have our own APIs. We have developed our own APIs inside my Salesforce system, which I'm giving to the third-party system. So the third-party system will invoke or consume my APIs here. It won't matter. Okay. So now it may be given by the third party system or it may be given by yourself also here. Depends upon your need. So now at that time, we are going to be exposing it as the global. It doesn't mean it may be import operation, that it may be doesn't mean it may be the export operation, whatever. If that member you want to make it accessible by the outside of the organization, then we can define as global. Now in that member, we can define what kind of operation you want. Either it may be inserting the data or updating the data, retrieving the data, whatever. You can do whatever you want.
Okay.
Okay.
Feroz, will you teach also SOAP and REST APIs?
Yes, we are discussing about those things as well. During that integration topics, we are discussing that.
Okay.
How to define our own APIs, how can we consume these APIs into some third-party applications, or how can we consume the third-party APIs into our Salesforce. We will see practically here. Those concepts are called as call-ins and the call-outs. Call-ins and call-outs. Call-in means what? Nothing but the Salesforce is going to be invoking the APIs of the third-party system. Nothing but the call is coming into our system here. The call is coming into our local system. Call out means what? Whenever the Salesforce system is going to be invoking the third-party APIs. So at that time, it is called as call out. Now, like as incoming and outgoing. Now we'll see that what exactly the call-in service, what exactly the call-out service over here. Now, so now these are the various access specifiers are available when coming to your Apex programming here. Upon defining a class or upon defining a class member, we have to specify these access specifiers over here. Now for each and every class, member, we have to define that access specifier. Now in this case, how can we define a class? How can we define the class members inside that? Now let's see practically here. And how can we assign the value and how can we access these class members? Now we'll see practically here. Now let's see here. Let's take a small example. Define an Apex class to manage the customer information. So nothing but in order to store some customers data, I would like to create a class here. Now, for that I'm defining a class. I'm defining the class as public class customer data or customer info, whatever, or customer details. Now this is the class structure. Access specified, class name, the class the word class, and the name of the class. Whenever you are defining the class, we cannot give the class name like as customer space details. Always the class name should be a single word, or else it will be throwing that compilation exception to you. Now inside this class, you can define what are the members that you want. For each and every member, we can define a separate access specifier over here. You are aware of how to define the variable, how to write the business logic, everything you are aware of as of now. I'm defining some member here. Public integer customer ID. Public string customer name and the email ID and the address. And then I'm defining date, birth date. And I'm defining public boolean active status. These are the members that I have defined inside my class over here. Okay, these are the members that I have defined inside this class. Now, then how to create this class? Now let's see practically here. Now, for example, here, already we have discussed that in order to define this class, ways to define an Apex class. We can define the Apex class with the below ways. The first one is by using standard navigation. Second one is by using developer console. And the third one is by using Eclipse IDE. These are the three ways are there by which we can able to define that Apex class over here. We can define this Apex class by using these three ways: by using standard navigation, or by using a developer console, by using an Eclipse IDE here. Now we cannot use execute anonymous window. Execute anonymous window is used to write some sample code and to execute it here. But when coming to the Apex class, as soon as whenever you are creating an Apex class, this Apex class code will be sending to the first.com platform for the compilation. It will compile that code. If there is no syntactical mistakes are there, it is storing that code into that metadata repository. As soon as whenever it is saving that code into the metadata repository, the data will be getting tracked inside that Apex class object here. So now for that here, what are the classes that you have defined? All the classes will be storing inside that metadata repository here. All the class code will store into the metadata repository. All the classes code will be getting resides inside the metadata repository. Once the class has been resided inside the metadata repository, then any user can able to invoke that. Any user can able to access it whenever they want. No need to define a separate classes for every users. Within the organization, only one set of classes will be there. That classes can be invoked by the multiple users as well, depends upon their need. Now we can able to grant the access also. Which user can able to invoke this class, which user cannot able to invoke this class. We can able to grant the visibility also here by using that profile level. Already we have discussed that. During the profiles concept, we have discussed that by using the profile, we can able to grant the access on the different access levels in the different features of your Salesforce application. So now at that time here, on the Apex classes also, we can able to grant the access what Apex classes can be invoked by these users. Now, then how can we define this Apex class? Now let's see practically here. Now I'm defining this Apex class right now here. Now let's use any of these operations here, whatever you want. I'm logging into my Salesforce instance. Now we can use that standard navigation, or you can go with the developer console also here. Now I'm going with the standard navigation now. Let's go to that. Already we have given that navigation to you for the standard navigation. Go to the setup menu and click on it and come to the left panel. In the left panel, go to the build menu. Inside the build menu, go to the develop option and expand it. Inside the develop option, first option is Apex classes. In order to create the Apex classes, we are using this option here. Click on Apex classes. Now it is providing what are the various Apex classes that you have created in the past. These are the classes that we have created. If you want to create a new Apex class, then you can click on new button. Click on new button. It is providing an editor to you here. In this editor, we are going to be writing your Apex class code. Now, if you want to increase the font, then you can increase the font by using this capital A symbol. If you want to decrease the font, then you can able to use this decrease the font also here. Now, if you want to increase the font, then you can increase that here. Now you can write your Apex class code. I'm using public class customer details. Each and everything we have to write manually here. There is no IntelliSense feature over here. There is no IntelliSense feature. We have to write the class code manually. Public integer customer ID, public string, customer name, address, and the email ID. Now, so now I'm defining these members inside this class. Like I'm defining the active status of the customer, public date, birth date. These are the various members that I have defined inside this class. Once you have defined this class, then click on save button or quick save button here. So now, as soon as when you click on save button or quick save button, it will be sending this Apex class code to that first.com platform for the compilation. Inside the first.com platform, you are aware of how the code will be getting executed, what are the components available inside it, you are aware of that. Now it is going to be compiling your Apex code by using that Apex compiler. And then once the code has been successfully compiled, it is going to be saving this code into the metadata repository to you here. Now I'm saving this code. Click on save button. It has saved the code successfully here. Now the code has been saved successfully. There is no issues available inside my code. And now, if you want to create a class by using that developer console, then how can we create that? Now this class is available inside that metadata repository. Then how do we know my class is available inside the metadata repository or not here? So at that time, if you want to go to that Apex classes, then in this Apex classes list, your class name will be getting populated to you here. Nothing but this is the customer details are available. What are the class that you have created? The class is available, which I have created by this particular user. And in this class, it will be having that these many number of characters are available here. And this class is in active status right now. And this has been created on 2nd of January at 5:25 p.m. in the evening. So now here, this is the user has created this class. So now everything will be getting stored, nothing but now this is the classes which are available inside that metadata repository for you. Now, if you want to create a class by using that developer console, then how can we create here? Now let's create an Apex class here. Create an Apex class to manage the student details. For that, I'm creating a separate class here. Let's go to the developer console right now. In this case, I'm using the developer console. You are aware of how to open the developer console over here. Now, upon creating a class by using this developer console, now let's see practically here. Now go to your name on the top right corner. Click on developer console. Okay, click on developer console. If you want to create a new Apex class, then at that time, go to the file menu on the top right corner, the top left corner on the developer console editor. Expand that file menu. Click on new. Okay, click on new menu item. As soon as when you click on this new menu item, it is providing a submenu. Inside that submenu, you will be having an option called as Apex class. Click on Apex class. Now it is providing a small dialog box to you. Inside this dialog box, you will be having a small text box. In order to enter the name of the class with which you are going to be creating a new class inside that. I'm creating a class with the name student details. I'm creating a class with the name student details. Click on OK. With this name, it is going to be creating a class for you here. Now your class has been defined right now over here. Your class has been defined right now where the class structure is ready-madely available. The class template is ready-madely available. Previously, when you go to that, the standard navigation, we have to define everything by our own from the scratch. But when coming to the developer console, it is giving that flexibility that it is providing the template ready-madely for us. Once you specify the class name, automatically class syntax is available to you here. Inside the class, whatever the members that you want, we can define those members inside that class. Now for that, I'm defining these class members here. Public, integer, student ID, and public string, student name, address, and the email ID. And then public boolean is active. Currently, he is in active status or not. Public date, joining date, comma birth date. So now this is the way we are defining the class inside this here. Now we can able to define the class inside this particular developer console also here. When coming to the developer console, it is giving the more flexible ways to us where it is going to be clearly describing the class structure by default. The class template will be giving to you by default here. And then we can able to save this class also. Already we have discussed that when coming to the developer console, it is providing that auto save option. For example, observe this one here. I'm defining this class and then I am removing this semicolon after the is active. Observe what happened here in this case. Nothing but it has identified a problem over here. Nothing but when coming to this line, it has identified a small exclamation symbol to you, which is giving there is an error is available in this line. What is that error? This is the problem. When you come to this problems tab, you will be having unexpected token public. Because it is expecting a semicolon after this is active, but it has identified that keyword public here. This is unexpected token. Now go to that code just to make a semicolon here. After that is active. Now for each and every 10 fraction of seconds, your code will be sending to the first.com platform for the compilation again. This is like as autosave option which we have inside your Gmail application. For every 10 seconds, it will be sending that code to that first.com platform for the compilation. And then the first.com platform is going to be compiling the code. It is going to be saving the code into the metadata repository automatically here. So why they have given this option is when coming to the Salesforce, this is purely an on-demand application. Now, whenever you are typing the whole code, if there is no autosave option is available, if you are written some 100 lines of code without saving anything, at that time, whenever you are about to save this class, when you click on that save button, suddenly internet connection has been disconnected, then the whole code will be getting lost. Whenever you are writing that code, suddenly if the power went off, then automatically your system will be getting shut down. So at that time, your whole code will be getting lost. So for that here, Salesforce has given that flexibility to you that we can able to save that code automatically for every fraction of 10 seconds here. So for that, you can continue with your writing your code, but the Salesforce is going to internally saving this code internally by default inside that first.com platform. So for that here, even though if the internet connection has been disconnected in the middle, even though the system has been shutting down in the middle, at that time, you may be losing either 1 or 2 lines of code. The remaining code will be available to you as it is. So for that here, they have given this auto save option here. Now, so now if you want to save this class explicitly, then you can use that Control S option here. Now, this is the way we are going to be defining the classes inside your Salesforce instance. Then, how can we create the object? How to assign the value for these members? How to access these class members from the outside? We'll see practically in tomorrow's session. In tomorrow's session, we are going to discuss about how can we create the objects and how can we assign the value for these class members and how can we retrieve the value from these class members. We'll see practically, and then we'll see practically how the Salesforce is going to be maintaining ORM technology internally by default. What it contains, what are the members are available inside that, everything we'll see practically over there in tomorrow's session. Don't miss the tomorrow's session. Tomorrow's session is very, very important for us so that we can understand how we are going to be interacting with the Salesforce object through programmatically.
Feroz?